Carrié Solage, and I'm very thankful to have each and every one of you here, especially as we start the holiday seasons of Passover and Ramadan, and here we are at the beginning of Holy Week. And as a Catholic, I have to say that I'm very thankful to be here amongst so many leaders of faith, because I haven't got to confession yet this week. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here with so many people that I've long respected for their leadership in the areas of interfaith dialogue, for their leadership in the areas of promoting peace, for their leadership in being just good people, God-fearing people who believe that evil wins when good people look the other way when bad things happen. And that is to quote Dr. King. I'm not going to be long. I would like to thank the many co-sponsoring organizations, the Islamic Radio of America, the APAC. Thank you so much for my many friends for being here. I also want to thank CARE and JCRC and the AJC. And I want to thank Rabbi Pearl, who I've known since high school, for being here. And I would also like to thank the Hillside Islamic Center. I will allow our panelists to introduce themselves. And please excuse them, as some of them have to do some prayers during the event. But I would like to begin by saying that I rather choose peace. And being the legislator of a district that is very diverse, it's also known as the Ellis Island of Long Island, I would be not a leader if I did not bring people together during this very important time in our country. It's important for our leaders to bring people together. I do not want to wait for the next massacre or hate-related incident to bring people together. The two incidents that happened recently, most notably the most horrific anti-Semitic massacre that occurred in the United States, in Pittsburgh in October of last year, and also the most recent massacre, the death of 50 people at the mosque in New Zealand, brought me to tears, honestly. And I know that in very difficult times, people come together and goodness prevails, and darkness takes a second seat towards light. And so that's why as a leader, it's very important to bring people together. And we cannot assume anything. We have to emphasize our commonalities, our strengths, what makes us human. It's more than tolerance. It is about respect. And for example, my son's name is Gabriel, and there's an angel Gabriel in all the religions. And that's just one of many commonalities that we have. And so I'm very thankful that we'll be able to record and live stream this event. I know that our good friend Kevin was trying to live stream this event, but there was a Wi-Fi issue, but we will put this video on YouTube so that other people could learn about how to build and support interfaith dialogue. During the event, we'll hear from Detective Lieutenant Arnold Rothenberg from the Nassau County Police Department, the best police department that we have, and I want to thank you for being here. I would like to have all the panelists begin by sharing a word to set the tone, and I would like to have my good friend Rabbi Pearl from the Shabbat of Mineola please come forward. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Either way, that's fine.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. It's really an honor, good movie for me to join and be part of this amazing panel, and the purpose of the panel, and for everybody joining us. As Carrie pointed out, that my friendship with Carrie goes back many, many years. His good deeds began while he was in Elmont High School. Each year we honor Long Island students, both Good Deed Awards for Long Island students, and Carrie received an amazing award. Your good deeds then is still continuing today. I always tell everybody, if you want to become a big, famous elected official, receive a Good Deed Award. Guaranteed to get in there. There is a very serious side to this evening. I'm not sure why you chose me to begin, but a very serious side. And that is, there's a big problem out there, a very big problem on many, many fronts. Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, all kinds of racism, all kinds of stuff out there. And I would just briefly say that key to all of this, all these problems, particularly anti-Semitism, is ignorance. Pure ignorance, and ignorance creates hatred. But I want to just read you, I just want you to know a little bit about how I think, or how people of Chabad think. Today happens to be the 117th birthday of Rabbi Schneerson. In 1902 he was born. Rabbi Schneerson dedicated his entire life to friendship, goodness, kindness, education, and inspired thousands of young men and women, including myself. I was young all the time, to be dedicated to community. And I think it behooves, as we begin this evening, just to hear some of his words that helps us appreciate this. This was in response to October 23rd, 1991. A letter was written to the president of the Council of Polish-Jewish Relations. Unfortunately, at that time, in front of the synagogue in Warsaw, a terrible anti-Semitic act happened. So this was a letter the Rebbe wrote, Rabbi Schneerson wrote to the president of that area, of that synagogue, or that area in Poland. And when I'm going to read word verbatim, I want you to appreciate how I think part of the problem that we have to face with all these different things is key to what the Rebbe himself said. He said one of the reasons that when God designed the world, he made everything typically in pairs, or multiple trees, multiple animals, multiple birds, multiple oceans, multiple continents, everything in many. When it came to creating a human being, only one. A fully developed human being created in the image of God. And here's the reason why. And if people held this in mind before they spoke or before they acted, we wouldn't need to have these kind of gatherings. And he goes on to say, why did God create one human being? He was able to create so much multiples of everything else. So that no human being could claim superior ancestral origin. Hence, would also find it easier to cultivate a real feeling of kinship in all interhuman relationships. I rest my case, as we say in the old letter. If every one of us remembered there is no pecking order here, or someone bigger or less, we all have our diverse religions and outlooks, and that's our strengths. That's not our weaknesses. It's a beautiful world that so many different people. Look at the panel over here. I often say, why did I was so excited to come here, Carrié, I forgot to shave. I'm actually on standby for Duck Dynasty. But that's how I think. And every approach is that we all came from one. And we all have our diverse religions and talents and capabilities. And they complement each other. They complement each other. I serve as the resident rabbi at NYU Winthrop. And I was walking down the hallway the other day, and there was a big plaque there that notes special events in the history of the hospital. In 1990, they joined with South NASA. And now they're separated. But they used a certain word there to denote that event. Two hospitals, South NASA in Oceanside and the Winthrop Hospital. And they called it an alliance of equals. In those words, an alliance of equals. On the board there. If everybody remembered it's an alliance of equals, none of these things would go on. I just want to conclude with this. My father, of blessed memory, was a Holocaust survivor. I'm a second generation. My father was chosen by Dr. Mengele in Auschwitz in his selections. He saw his father and his brother, his other children, and they were on the left side. So my father went and walked over to the other side. He saw his father. The Nazi guard came and said, all right, you go to work. So I'm here today. He survived 3 concentration camps. So I'm sharing this with you for the following reason. Never in my whole life did I hear a word of hatred out of my father. And he saw it up front, not a joke or something on the internet happened to his father. He himself saw what happened to his parents and others. And yet he brought up his family. We all come from London, England. Never once did he say a negative word about anybody else of any other religion. brought us up to appreciate and to tolerate and to make jokes and to be kind to others of all backgrounds. Because my father taught us we all come from one, we're all created in the image of God. And lots of the problems that we find today is sheer arrogance and a lack of appreciation of the equal role we all have, the alliance of equals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi. I would like to bring forward Imam Ibad Wali of the Hillside Islamic Center. I would also like to recognize Kareem Aswala for helping organize this event. Thank you so much, Kareem. And I'd also like to recognize Gabrielle Guzman, the Secretary of the Office of Minority Affairs in the county. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon you all. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. All praise are for God who is one. Salutations upon the messengers, all of them, and our Prophet Muhammad after whom there is none. I'd thought a lot about what to say in this event, and I'd like to begin by thanking you for coming, showing your support, and to realize the numbers that have come out. I just was talking to one of my colleagues here that the number itself is revealing of the mindset of our communities, the priority of our communities. And an event like this, you would think in a time where there's so much crisis, so much hate, bigotry, that people would probably jump to join such an event where they find hope, they find peace, they find love, they find unity, solidarity. But evidently, it's not there. And here's proof, this gathering. And I'd like us to understand that there is something greater. There's something far greater that we need to understand, to know, before we can really tackle this issue on why it's happening, why these conversations people are not having or not even attending to hear. I go back to Kansas City, Missouri, 2014, the JCC, Jewish Community Center. A man walks in and kills 2 people, right? And he's not called a terrorist. He's not. Mass murder is defined by a man who uses a weapon to murder 4 or more people. So while he doesn't make the list, it's not a mass murder, number one. Number two, it's not even an act of terror. When it was known from his social media accounts that he had bias, he had made racial comments, he had a certain ideology. We go to Oak Creek, Wisconsin, 2012, and six Sikh are murdered on Sunday inside their temple, place of worship. Same profile, same type of individual, but is not called a terrorist. Chapel Hill, 3 Muslims in USC are murdered, cold blood, and the investigation leads us to believe that it was over a parking dispute, despite the fact that the social media account, the Twitter account, had evidence of this person having a bias against Muslims. All these accounts are taking place, and something is not right. There's a double standard. Words that usually would come out, people would be outraged if it was a different ethnicity and a different group being targeted. That type of outrage, that type of expression is not there, and it's not prevalent in the media either. So the question then I began to ask is, well, where is the prejudice? Where is it stemming from? And how do we identify this prejudice? And one thing that comes that I'd like us to start thinking about and sharing is that when we see hate, or we want to study hate against Muslims or Islamophobia, we shouldn't be studying Muslims. We should be studying those people who have these views, right? Because if you take the object of prejudice and you start studying the object of prejudice, that in itself is prejudice. So if people hate Jews, then we need to understand why they hate them rather than study the Jews and figure out reasons to hate. The object of prejudice cannot be studied, but rather those who are portraying this, those people that are promoting this, they need to be studied. what's wrong with them? Why do they hold these views? And to reconcile those issues. Going back to, the West, and I believe there are two types of West. It's not just one West, it's two types. There's the European West and the American West. Seeing the European West, we know, in terms of immigration, the minorities that are there now came due to, the slave labor that the Europeans wanted. The immigration was designed in such a way to bring these people over, not expecting that they would now become part of the society, but rather would just do the labor, do the work, and leave. Well, guess what? They never left, right? They stayed. And you have third generation, right? Whatever generation, whatever country they came from, Tunisia, Morocco, and you find studies where in that demographic, 25% unemployment. That's astronomical in terms of unemployment. Why? Because if the name, it sounds Muslim on a resume and goes to the French government, when French employers, they see the Muslim name, they throw it in the trash. Don't even give them opportunity. And where's that coming from? Because of the nation state, which believes that the political and cultural identity must coincide within the nation state. That's why it's so hard for the minorities to become assimilated. Whereas we don't have that problem here in America. Well, at least not that much. We know that even the Constitution, as Mr. Solages mentioned, the Honorable Martin Luther King, when he was fighting for civil liberties, he didn't go outside of the Constitution. He went into the Constitution, and through the Constitution that we have and blessed to have, he fought for civil liberty and rights. How many of you have heard that Sharia law is coming to America and is going to take over America? Just by show of hands, how many have heard that? Right? Almost every single person raised their hand. How many of you know that there are rabbinical courts? Have I? Rabbinical courts in the United States. Been here for a very long time. And the halakha, got that right? And it's being practiced. And their laws, their sacred laws are being practiced within the rights granted by the Constitution. And if I was at a networking gathering with some lawyers and professionals, and I met this lady who was a lawyer and white, and I said, I wanted to know if I can get some advice from you. I wanted to start a project. And she said, well, listen. And I was like, I wanted to establish a Sharia court. As soon as I said it, I think she was drinking something. She almost spit out of her mouth. She was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, and she's like, well, what exactly do you mean by that? And I know exactly what she's thinking. Stoning of people and chopping heads off, because that's what's there. That's what's in the media. And it's simply, people don't know, even whether it's the halakha or the Sharia, when politicians talk about how, we can't have Sharia law, it's really unfortunate that they don't have an understanding of their own constitution. Must have failed 7th grade, social studies class or something. Where in the Constitution, the law of the land, that's the Constitution itself is the supreme law of the land. Nothing supersedes it. And that's already there. Whatever can function within that is granted the authority, granted the right. So just as rabbinical courts are functioning, Sharia courts shouldn't have any problem. But why is that a problem? Because of some underlining, some movements, some ideologies that are taking form and shape and really changing or shaping our perception and making that our reality. Unfortunately, we have a long battle. We have an uphill battle that really starts with all of us holding our hands together, realizing that we're here for the good fight. We're here to work together to remove these doubts and remove these problematic views, and to not judge others, but rather criticize those who call people to judgment, because we don't have the right to judge each other. What we should be doing is judging ourselves. And on that note, one of the things that I'd like to share as I end is, in order to solve these problems, I'm not going to blame the individuals who promote hate or to, talk about those individuals who, do commit these acts of terror. I'm going to point the finger to myself and my community. And each and every one of us needs to take that responsibility. That it's my responsibility to change the narrative. And if I see hate on anyone, whether it's a Muslim, whether it's a Jew or a Christian or any race or any religion, then I and my community need to stand up. That has to be the dialogue, that has to be the reaction, immediate reaction. Unfortunately, when some of the crimes that were committed in Christchurch, that heinous crime of terror, where this individual came and murdered and slaughtered, killed 50 Muslims praying inside their mosque, in 2 different mosques. These terrorists, unfortunately, we didn't see the name of terrorism. We didn't hear about it. Very few politicians came out, and very few even religious leaders. Everyone here was good. We had an event, interfaith event, and everyone here was pretty on point with their words. But there's a problem. And that problem is that we are not engaging enough ourselves and our own communities to stand up and express what is right and change the narrative and not hesitate. Why are politicians hesitating to mention that is a problem? Number 2, the education system is a problem. Why? Because I went through it. I'm in my 9th, 10th grade social studies class, and the professor speaks about Islam, and the first thing he says, Islam was spread by the sword. That's what's being taught to me as a Muslim in high school. And I have never heard of that, and not before or after. And I then went and studied Islam for 6 years formally, and learned Sharia law, and learned Islamic jurisprudence, and learned Islamic history. And to me, that can be further than the truth. I go to college, and the professor is teaching Islamic studies, gives us a book, 200, 300 pages, and the first week of Islamic studies, and we have to go home and read a section, we come back, and I'm asking the professor, why are we reading this book? Because in it talks about Islamic theology. And what is it? That the earth is actually inside the eye of a turtle, and the turtle is on top of a swan, which is flying around the horns of a cow, and the cow is sitting on top of a frog. And this is the first week of Islamic studies. And I said, well, why are you doing this? Well, it's a view. It's a view of one out of the hundreds of thousands and millions of Islamic scholars, and you've selected this one to teach Islam? Islam is a monotheistic religion, and it believes in what Christians and Jews believe. This is understood. Why are you teaching this particular section? And the reply, I still remember, and echoes with me until today. If you don't like it, you can leave. If you don't like it, you can leave. I spoke to other students, Muslim students that took the same professor with the Oriental view. And if you want to read up on that, Edward Said is the #1 person you should be reading up on. And I said, did you take this course with the professor? I said, yeah. I said, listen, just give her what she wants and you'll get your A. Otherwise, drop the course. That's here at Queens College. Doing my bachelor's in computer science, that's what I had to experience. Something's wrong. Hopefully this night, this day, we can realize that those problems are not going to solve themselves, but we have to come together like this. Even if no one else shows up, we need to continue to show up. Thank you for having us. Thank you for the good work that you're doing. God bless. Good night.
You took my papers, I'm sorry. We have next, I think it's below yours. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, thank you. We have Mindy Krollman, Executive Director of the JCRC. Excuse me for mispronouncing your name. Mindy, please come forward. Let's hear a round of applause to Mindy.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here today. As I said, my name is Mindy Krollman. I'm the Executive Director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Long Island. The main goal of JCRC is to bring communities together. When I first took this position, it really excited me because I have always believed there's far more that unites us than ever could divide us. Unfortunately, in the years that I've been here so far, people are trying to prove me wrong on that. And it's really very frustrating and very disturbing when you see that. And it's one thing when you're trying to prove wrong, but it's another thing when that wrong becomes frightening. And the more that I have been in this room, what I have been hearing from people that I see in various meetings and speaking engagements and programs is how scared they're getting to live here. To live here as a Muslim, to live here as a Jew, to live here as a Christian. There is so much hatred that we are seeing. And so I wish I could right now be standing up and before I even saying, so I have the answer. Fortunately, and I'm afraid none of us here probably has a true answer. But the fact that we're here, that's the start. That's saying we all think that there's an issue too. Because you wouldn't be sitting here in these, at least I don't believe, that you would be sitting here in these seats right now if you didn't think that there needs to be work, that something has to be accomplished here. I was saying at a meeting about a week or so ago that right after the atrocities in New Zealand, my organization put together a program. We did it at the Islamic Center at the mosque in Westbury. We had approximately, we did it on a Friday for the afternoon prayer service. I would say we probably had about 200 people in attendance, including a decent amount of media coverage, people of various religions, backgrounds, politicians, lay leaders. It really covered the gamut. And I was very pleased, actually, because first of all, this was put together within a week's time after the atrocities in New Zealand. So if anyone's ever put together programs, you know, a week's time to put together a program of this nature, that's pretty good. They get that many people there. But my problem was not that we had that many people there. That was wonderful. If I did that today, and I mean right now, today, we said, all right, tomorrow we're going to meet at that same mosque, and we're going to do that same, be there for the people coming in to pray during their afternoon prayer session. I guarantee you, I won't have media attention. I won't have half. 2/3 at least of the people that showed up. Because when they showed up because there was an incident. We show up, we do come as together as community, and I'm proud of our community for this. That when something happens that is an atrocity, that is horrendous, I saw this after this Pittsburgh incident, I saw it now this after New Zealand, we see this, that people do care. Unfortunately, we have a very short attention span, and we don't remember too far into the future. And so when another atrocity happens, we'll get together again, I guarantee. But as you said before, we're coming not when there's a problem. We want to come together when there isn't a problem. We can just sit here and talk to each other as people and say, we need to be what I said before, that we have so much more in common that divides us. We need to find those commonalities. We need to say, you're my brother, you're my sister. And that we shouldn't be hating each other. And where does hate from, as someone said before? It comes from ignorance. It comes from the lack of education. It comes from fear. You know, Rabbi Pearl, I've heard say, today I like the Duck Dynasty reference, and to be honest, that was kind of funny. But I often heard him tease that he's in the witness protection program. When we see someone like a Rabbi Pearl, when we see someone who's dressed a little differently than us, who looks a little differently than, whether it's Jewish, whether it's Muslim, whether it's Christian, if we don't really understand, there is a feeling of fear. There's a feeling of, you're not like me. And this is what we have to teach. This is what we have to experience. One of the things that, I'll be honest, it's a little slow moving. I'm going to blame Rabbi Vernon for that. I'll take credit too. But Rabbi Vernon and I co-chair a group called Children of Abraham. I see a couple of people here who are actually members also. The whole idea was to bring the three main religions together because we're all from one person, we all stem from it, and to say, let's come together, let's share, let's experience, let's learn. And some ideas, and I've seen this being done throughout actually Nassau County, is taking groups of teenagers, Jews, Muslims, Christians, and taking a holiday and bringing them to that temple church mosque so they can learn from each other, so they can experience, so they can understand what happened, why we do certain rituals. Once you start learning, once you start understanding, all of a sudden it's like it. I understand what's happening in your religion. I understand why you're wearing a yarmulke, why you're wearing a... I get it. I understand that. It's perfect. It makes perfect sense to me. But unfortunately, we don't have enough of that happening. So I'm going to ask all of you here. My organization, JCRC, well, yes, I will tell you the J does stand for Jewish, but we cover all religions, all ethnic groups, all races. The idea is to bring groups together. I asked for your help. You're all sitting here right now. I cover the entire Long Island area. Bring to me ideas. Bring to me thoughts. You want to have something within your ethnic group, within your religion, within your church, your mosque, your synagogue. I'll help you plan it. I'll help bring communities together. Because that is how we start with fighting hatred. That is how we start with fighting the Islamophobia, the anti-Semitic feelings in Nassau County, in Suffolk County, Long Island. We need to come together. We need to stop saying theirs, hers, it's ours. We all live here. And we all know we don't ever want to see the atrocities that we've seen that we've been speaking about. That's just too painful to live. So I ask you, on positive notes and others, let's come together. Let's work together. Let's be one together. And I thank you for having me here, and I thank you all very
Thank you, Ms. Thank you. We'd like to bring forward Ms. Asaf Nasher, Esquire, from the Executive Director of CARE, New York.
Thank you so much. So as our legislator said, my name is Asaf Nasher. I'm with the Council on American Islamic Relations, the New York chapter. And for those of you that might not know what CARE New York does, we're essentially a civil rights organization, national in nature, and we defend civil liberties. We try to empower a very underserved community that is now battling the height of Islamophobia, some may say, although that is debatable. And then we also do a lot of education, civic engagement, and we try to build coalitions that'll help with mutual understanding. So that's really the bulk of our work. There's a lot to be done. And you know, as I stand here today, I first thank all of you for making the time to be here, and for you to allow this forum to take place, and to all the speakers as well. And we've referenced a lot of things, and it's all one and the same. Every single act of hate, no matter who it's directed to, is fueled by that same hate. Right? And we've referenced New Zealand. And that was an atrocity that we won't soon forget, and it was something that was felt worldwide. But we have hate crimes and violence that's happening right here in our streets in New York almost daily. And I need people to understand that we have had plots to bomb Islamburg right here in New York. Not too many people have heard of that. We have had masjid arsons across our nations, masjid meaning mosque. It's the Arabic word for mosque. We have had violence in places of worship, in masajid, the plural of mosque. We've had it at black churches, we've had it at synagogues, we've had it at the Sikh temples. And it's happening in our generation, under our watch. And hate crimes, we're told, according to the latest of the FBI report stats, that they're up 17%, and that they've been increasing for the past 3 to 4 years. And we also know that workplace discrimination is up, in particular against Muslims. The EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, a federal agency, is telling us that 1/4 of their complaints for work discrimination is coming from the Muslim community. Now that's already bad, but when you think about the fact that we're only about 3 to 4% of the population in America, yet 1/4 of the complaints are coming from Muslims, and I can tell you, we are underreporting. The Muslim community is terrible at reporting things. That should mean something to all of us. And when 20 to 25% of our youth in schools tell us that they are facing religious-based discrimination in school, that is a collective problem. My brothers and my sisters, if you'll allow me to speak to you as such, because we are of one family, we have systemic criminalization, otherization, dehumanization of the Muslim community, even through government policies. Honestly, the Muslim ban is one policy of Islamophobia. Honestly, treating Muslims as second-class citizens every time we come in and out of the borders, just go into any major airport, go into their secondary screening room, which is a room probably many of you have not seen, where they essentially sometimes pull you off a plane, not because you've done anything suspicious, but because your name is Muslim sounding, or maybe somebody on the plane is uncomfortable with you sitting there with them. In front of your family, taken to another back room, waiting for 2 or 3 hours, to be taken into a smaller room, to be interrogated for another 2 to 3 hours, and being asked questions like, do you pray? Where do you pray? Whom do you listen to? What countries have you visited and why? What do you think about the politics of this nation? Last time I checked, I'm in the United States of America. I'm allowed to associate with any association I want. So long as I am within the bounds of the law, I should not be treated like a second-class citizen. We also need to understand that we do have recourse. Right? I agree that perhaps we won't have 100% of the answer. There's always going to be evil, unfortunately. But I also believe that the good people far outweigh those with extremist values. Islamophobia, and the reason that I said it's debatable that it's at its height is because, we tend to think Islamophobia is new. It's not. Let's just think about the slaves that were brought into this country. The majority of them were Muslim. Right? They were stripped of their identity, their religion, their name purposely. That was supremacy as well. And we saw it throughout the birth of our nation. And yet, I can still hold on to this idea, this hope, and I believe this fact, that the good people outweigh those with extremist values. So what is the answer? If not in totality, then the answer that we can come to together is that we cannot be quiet bystanders. The hate crimes that I have witnessed, the number of times that I have been in hospital rooms with people laying down with broken bones, that is due in part because of complacency. And complacency is sometimes equivalent to complicity. So what I would like to suggest is that we stop being complacent, that we challenge the narrative in the media, that we stop using words, because words do matter, that we stop using words like Islamist extremism. We don't blame any other religion when somebody does something bad unless he's in some way, in the slightest of ways, related to an Islamic identity, even if they're not a practicing Muslim. So we need to hold people accountable, and that means our politicians, It means media. We need to make decisions for ourselves. And what we're allowing ourselves to ingest without challenging it, we need to speak to our youth to let them know at the dinner table that it is never okay to utter a racist comment, not as a joke or otherwise. There needs to be a zero tolerance amongst us. And I think if we do that, we'll see those numbers come down. We can relieve some of the ignorance and hopefully relieve some of the pain and sorrow and tears that all of our communities have been seeing. I thank you again for allowing me to be here, and I look forward to a good discussion and lots of questions.
We'll hear now from Reverend Pastor Danila Archibald, a local Elma resident and a man who wears many hats. And then we will hear from our Detective Lieutenant from the Nassau County Police Department, Detective Lieutenant Arnold Rothenberg.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's truly an honor to be here tonight. I want to thank Legislator Carrié, Solages for inviting me. It's a pleasure and an honor to be amongst some of my colleagues from the various groups that we represent here. Wonderful people sitting here. My brother Malik in the audience as well. First of all, like Legislator Solages introduced me, my name is Pastor Danilo Archibald. I am the senior pastor of New Jerusalem Cathedral Church of God in Christ. I'm also a national representative for the Church of God in Christ for Bishop Charles E. Blake. When I heard that we were having this conversation, I was excited to be here again because being part of the District Attorney's Faith Leaders Advisory Council, again with my many colleagues here, we actually had this conversation. We embarked upon this little conversation again with Rabbi Bro, right, on, I believe it was last Thursday or so, maybe? And it touches my heart. When I first came to this country, all right, I'm glad to be an American citizen, right? But I'm originally from Panama, Central America. My grandparents are from San Andres, Rhode Island, off the coast of Colombia. But my great-grandparents are from Scotland. You would never know that, right? And so when people talk about race and racism, it really annoys me. I tell my colleagues this all the time. I don't come from Pluto, you don't come from Mars. Whether you like it or not, we're all related. It is what it is, right? You accept the facts as they are, or you don't. It is what it is, right? But at the end of the day, I am my brother's keeper. I am my sister's keeper. And it's all for what's going on. But again, we have to come together. We can't look at our differences and think that they set us apart. Our differences, like Rabbi Pearl actually said, this is not the first time I've heard him say it, right? Is really what unifies us and makes us strong as a whole. Our differences. Because our unique differences actually make us that whole. I read a book when I was around maybe 12 or 13 years old, and I'm paraphrasing here. An intelligent or somewhat smart individual is someone that knows his or her own weaknesses and strengths, right? So they table their strengths, right? But they work on their weaknesses by doing what? Engaging with other people who've overcome those obstacles so that they can bring it back down and become the whole person that he or she needs to be. And that's what we need to do. I'm not going to stay here long. Really hit it on the head. It starts at home. That stinking thinking mentality, that's really what I have to call it. My wife is a mental health clinician, and that's the characterization, the name that they put on it. We're not thinking right. The Bible states, so a man thinketh, so is he. And so if you have hatred in your heart, which comes from ignorance, a lack of knowledge, then it's going to lead to the stinking thinking, where I don't like this man, or I don't care for this woman, because my skin tone is different, the texture of my hair is different. You have to put all that nonsense to the side. I don't know how many of you remember, but back in the 70s when I first came to this country, there was prayer in the classroom. They took that out. So again, when I heard this lovely lady talk about not allowing religious practices to be adhered to in the school. It started from way back then. It's sad that we're in 2019 and we still have walls of divisiveness, right? Where we can't interact with one another, where I can't tell you I care for you and love for you, and have not just sympathy, but empathy. In other words, I'm placing myself in one's shoes to feel what he or she is feeling, to know what he or she is going through, right? And I'll close with this. I gave a sermon one time on the book of Nehemiah about the building of the wall. That's what it's going to take for all of us here. We look different, but we all come, right, with different skill sets. And so where I'm lacking again, that's where I need this lady and her husband. Where I'm deficit at, this is where I need this young man. If I'm lacking in another area where there's a deficit, this is where I need the police officers or my brothers and my sisters here. But we need to understand that we have to come together to overcome this negative, nasty, demonic mindset that's just threatening our culture and our very survival here as the human race. And I close with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And now we have Detective Arnold Rothenberg from the Nassau County Police Department, commanding officer. Please come forward. Thank you, sir.
On behalf of Commissioner Patrick Ryder, I'm appearing tonight. He would like to be here, he couldn't, so I'm here. I'm the commanding officer of the 5th Precinct Detective Squad over in Elmont, and we are your police department. And I say that because we need you to be a partner. I'm here for kind of the nuts and bolts, part of violence crimes and hate crimes. And what's going on right now. And what I really want to stress is that, as somebody mentioned before about underreporting, and I think that's true, I think we need the community to tell us what's going on. We can't do this without you. If you see something, I know it sounds like a cliche, but if you see something, say something. If there's some sort of graffiti, cleaning it up is great, but before you clean it up, tell us. Let us come out and take a look at it. That way we know if there's a pattern. We can't do anything if we don't know about it. And then, this is the hard part, and this is the part where I stress that you're our partners. If there are people in your own community who are expressing views that alarm you, we need to know about it. Because after something happens, people say, oh, we knew that, we all knew that this person was off, that this person had these views. And we didn't know about it. Tell us, we'll investigate it. And like I said, we're not the cavalry. We have some very good investigators. Our 5th Precinct Squad is an excellent squad. All over the county, we have excellent detectives. But again, we can't guess. We need you to tell us. And what I really did want to stress is that we are your partners. We're not an occupying force, we're not the enemy, we're partners, we're part of the community. If there are detectives that you know or cops that you know that you feel comfortable with, call them, and they'll call us. But that's the one thing I really wanted to stress tonight, so if we're partners, then we need to know.
In light of the upcoming holidays, are there any potential threats or just any issues?